Take 500. It is a truth universe.
You're not introducing yourself as Pastor Tom immediately after.
I got to do that right after.
Yeah.
Here we go. It is a truth universally acknowledged that pastors do not talk politics in polite society. Well, I'm Pastor Tom Arthur from Sycamore Creek, and today I'm talking politics. And not just politics, but politics and religion with my good friend Kay Sinclair. Kay, what are we doing today?
We are opening the series of I Think You're Wrong, but I'm Still Listening.
Trying to have grace-filled political conversations. Kay, since pastors don't talk politics in polite society, that must mean that you are not polite society.
I am the bane of society.
Does that mean you're my bane?
Probably.
All right, so we're starting this new series called I Think You're Wrong, but I Am Still Listening, based on a book by the same title. Two Christian women, Sarah and Beth, wrote this book. One is on the left, one is on the right. They have a podcast called Pantsuit Politics, and I reached out to them to make a video just for us. And they made this video about their challenge, Exit the Echo Chamber Challenge, which we're encouraging everybody to do. We're going to get to it a little bit later on. But here's Sarah and Beth. So insert video right here, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, Sycamore Creek. It's Sarah and Beth from Pantsuit Politics. We heard that you are reading our book, and we are honored, we are grateful, and we can't wait to hear from you.
We are especially excited to hear how it goes for you when you take our Exit the Echo Chamber challenge in the book. We know this is not for the faint of heart. We know you can do it. We are just really honored that you're spending this time with us. So thank you. Even if you think we're wrong, thanks for listening to us.
That's right.
And keep in touch.
So Sarah and Beth had a perfect quote for this discussion. The reality is that we never stopped talking politics altogether. We stopped talking politics with people who disagree with us. The rule that was supposed to prevent others' discomfort has now become a weapon to protect us from our own.
So, Kay, does this mean that this is a series about agreeing to disagree?
God, I hope not.
That was as in God, a prayer to God, right?
Yeah. Please no.
What does agree to disagree mean?
Agree to disagree is that just get out of my face phrase. It's get out of here. And it's not just dismissive, it's harmful.
It's like a dead end road, right?
Exactly.
Like the conversation's not going any further. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to stop the conversation. We're actually trying to have a conversation, a real conversation.
Invite it.
You and me.
Welcome
I don't know
it.
which side you're going to be on, but you or me.
Me.
Yeah, whichever side we're on. I also think it's important to say that what we're trying to do is not what you hear on TV, not what you hear in the radio, not what you hear in the news, not what you see or read on your Twitter or Facebook or social media, whatever it is that you pay attention to. We're trying to have a grace-filled political conversation and insert some grace into this conversation.
This is not a political debate.
Not a political debate. So, Kay, there's some key verses for this whole series. You want to read those for us?
Put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. It reminds me of one of my favorites is be still and know. Be still.
God is God and we're not. So there's another verse, Paul's letter to the Ephesians.
Yep, in Ephesians we have be kind and compassionate to one another. Forgive each other, just as in Christ God forgave you.
I think in that Bible there's a footnote right there, and if you read the footnote it says, except in political conversations, right?
I don't know.
No, compassion is so important even when you disagree over really important stuff. One of the things that sold me on this book was that the inscription on the first page is actually from John Wesley, and I don't know that Sarah and Beth are Methodists at all.
Yeah?
My phone just told me it's getting warm and it's going to shut down.
Okay, hold on. Let me...
It's like crazy. We were on to the John Wesley.
Yeah, you were just starting John. 3, 2.
All right, after a brief pause because our phones were overheating and we were overheating, ta-da, Kay has on now a yellow shirt.
the other primary color.
But they quote from Wesley's sermon on Catholic spirit, and here's what Wesley says. He says, though we cannot think alike, may we not love alike. May we not be of one heart, though we are not of one opinion. Without all doubt we may. Herein all the children of God may unite, notwithstanding these smaller differences. These can be smaller differences that we're talking about, or they can be really big differences across the political aisle, or often you're engaging people where?
Often when I'm engaging people, it is polar opposite matters of life and death.
You seem to have conversations on the polls. I'm in the middle a lot more. I think it's important to start with a definition about politics. What's politics, Kay?
It's the policies and written laws that create the structure of our society and culture.
It's how we live together, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know why you would not want to talk about how we live together.
It's a little important.
That doesn't seem like a conversation off the table to me. Beth is on the right and Sarah's on the left, and they have this grace-filled conversation. And there's a way that they talk about the left and the right from a kind of political perspective. I did a podcast interview with them for Reach Resources a couple of months ago. Here's a little audio clip of them talking about how they see things on the left and how they see things on the right. Listen up.
Pantsuit Politics and my partnership with Beth has been such a blessing because it's given me a space to do that. We sit down for, 2 hours every week and just get to process, well, how do we feel about this? What do we think about this difficult thing the country's going through? How do we feel about this leader? That's really kind of intense emotional work, but really valuable to just have the space to talk about these things. And I think that's what the church can really bring to its community is a space and a process and just a place to do this sort of work, to have these kind of hard conversations.
Yeah.
I still have lots of disagreement with Sarah. The metaphor that we like to work with is that when it comes to the federal government and we see a problem and we agree on what the problem is, we try to really do that in good faith. Because I think lots of what the conversation in America looks like is one party says there's a problem and the other party says, no, there isn't. Instead of all of us saying, okay, we see this problem together. Let's talk about how we prioritize and solve it. So we try to, in really good faith, say, okay, here's the problem. We've defined it together. Sarah is ready to bring the full force of the federal government to it. She's the accelerator, right? We've got a big problem. We've got a big government that can solve it. And I'm more like the brakes, saying things can happen that we don't want when the federal government starts to solve a problem. And we're the reverse on private industry. I'm excited for private industry to try to solve a problem. Sarah is the brakes on that and reminds me of Facebook and Uber and all the times that unregulated private industry goes wrong. And we have really worked out through all these conversations that Sarah was describing how you need both to go anywhere in a car. You cannot press both down all the way. And you definitely can't press both down all the way the entire time together if you want to go somewhere. And so I think the grace between us, it does get narrower, those differences, because we spend so much time in conversation. We're working on each other and we're refining ourselves through the process. But we still maintain some philosophical differences. We've just figured out that that's really healthy and we need them.
So, Kay, you and I had really different upbringings, didn't we? We're actually, our cameras are faced to kind of describe that. I've got the churches behind me here because I grew up talking all faith and no politics, but you grew up very differently.
I did. I actually grew up talking all politics. My parents raised me to be very knowledgeable in what was going on. They actually helped start the GSA at LCC. I was also raised with the ideal that whatever religion I wanted to pursue, so long as I really studied and understood what it meant to be a part of that religion, I was free to enter whatever faith I wanted to follow.
So you've got the capital kind of in your background because you grew up talking all politics and very little religion. I have the churches in the background because I grew up talking all religion and almost no politics. And we both have crisscrossed. We both have come like in a different, to where I'm like wanting to talk politics more and you're wanting to talk faith more. or both of those things. And for me, that was a journey of really getting to know marginalized people and seeing how the policies that we have were hurting them. That life was good for me, but not necessarily for them. Kay, how did you end up realizing that faith was an important thing to talk about?
It was actually this very idea. Finding people who were willing to actually listen to what I had to say and to what other marginalized people had to say. And coming into a faith society where the people didn't have all the answers and were okay with that. And we're asking, well, what's your experience?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're saying, I might disagree with you,
but
or think you're wrong,
still
but
listening.
I'm still listening.
Sarah and Beth actually had another really great thing to say about this. They said, for many of us, policy affecting health insurance, military engagement, gun control, that can be the difference between life and death.
Life and death.
Life and death. So, Tom, where's your starting place on that?
I'm a heterosexual, white male, Western, educated, cisgender. As far as like the cultural props go, privileges, I'm at the top of the totem pole for the most part, or at least close to the top. Whenever we get into politics and these sort of heated conversations, I kind of like, all right, everybody calm down just a little bit. Calm down, come on. We don't need to get so worked up about this. And let's be meek and mild, like with Jesus and some sheep or something like that, you know, the meek and mild Jesus. But for you, Kay, I think I've learned and had to learn that for you and for others in marginalized groups, that this is life and death. Like when I say calm down, this, you know, let's not get too excited about this, you encounter that very differently.
Even just talking about in current events, in right now, with the pandemic, disabled people are being classified as lower priority if we become ill. Because our quality of life is already lower and we aren't contributing as much to society. We are deemed lower priority. We are literally deemed less worthy to live.
Healthcare policy for someone who has been diagnosed with a terminal illness is life and death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And hate crime has visited my door literally with death threats, with my windows being slashed to ribbons, with rocks being thrown at our windows. We've had to flee homes because we are queer, because I am trans. That is life and death. That is a literal words wishing my death and threatening my life.
It's really humbling to me. I mean, I remember sitting in your living room with fellow Sycamore Creek partners praying after those death threats were written on your door. And that's not something that I normally experience, again, as a white heterosexual male. So what we're not wanting to say, don't get passionate or frustrated or perhaps even angry. But in the midst of that, we still have to treat other people with compassion, with kindness. That's got to be a level playing field. We're trying to insert grace into these political conversations.
It's about how to take your anger and your hurt and your passion, and instead of wielding it like a weapon, craft it like a tool. Take your anger and your hurt and your passion, and instead of wielding it like a weapon, craft it like a tool. And use it as a tool.
So let's go back to the live studio audience for this Chatterbox question. What was your family like growing up? Did you talk politics and religion? Or did you talk politics but not religion, or religion but not politics? Or did you not talk any of it? We'd love to hear from you right in the comments section, and we'll talk about it now. All right, so through all of this, we again want to go back to Paul, his letter to the Colossians and to the Ephesians. And he says, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. And then to the church at Ephesus, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. Here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring the values that we have in our faith to our political conversations and gain some wisdom from Sarah and Beth about how to have grace-filled political conversations. So here are 3 tips today that we want to give you from Sarah and Beth about how to have grace-filled political conversations. Here's 2 people who've been doing this for a long time in this friendship, speaking across political aisles. Here's their wisdom for us. The first one is take off your jersey. Kay, are you a sports fan at all?
I am a Red Wings fan, and I will confess with great sorrow, I am a Detroit Lions fan.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too.
Who are the great rivals for the Lions?
The Lions, the Bears.
The Bears.
The worst.
So here's the thing, like when you're on a playing field in sports, you put your jersey on, you demonize the other team, but hopefully if you meet those people, those players off of the field, you're going to treat them like real human beings.
Hopefully.
Too often we take that same idea to our political conversations. We put on our red political jersey, our blue political jersey, and we stop treating the other people like a human being, worthy of that compassion, worthy of that gentleness and kindness. Sarah and Beth say this: our partisan jerseys had prevented a real understanding of the issues. They also had caused us to spend most of our energy not on analyzing and refining our positions, but instead on demonizing our political opponents. Does that sound familiar?
Very much so.
I mean, it's so easy to get into that. And one of the things I really appreciate about this idea is it's really a focus on first making sure that you understand the problem. So, Kay, when we sit down and I might disagree with you at the beginning, but I'm still listening, I think we start when we take those political jerseys off saying, so how do you see the world? What is the problem that you see? And we spend some time there first in the problem.
We spend a lot of time talking about listening to listen and listening to respond.
Yeah.
And you find that a lot in conflict resolution. Anyone versed in conflict resolution or how to maintain negotiations or conversations, they'll tell you that there are 2 ways to listen. There's listening to actually hear what the person is saying, and there's listening in order to formulate the perfect response to take them down. I will be the first to admit I am very guilty of listening to someone with not just, all right, how am I going to just totally dismantle this argument, what they're saying, but to dismantle them so that they don't want to argue with me again. And that's not okay. That's not a good or healthy way for either party. It's not healthy for me. It's not healthy for you.
It's not healthy in your marriage. It's not healthy with your friends.
No.
And it's not healthy in politics.
No conversation should ever be held with the intention of, I want to create and craft this way to just utterly destroy you. That is not okay.
That's when we put our jerseys on. That's when we do that, right?
Exactly.
We're looking to win and score points. So we want to go back to our live studio again and have a conversation. When have you chosen a side in a conflict at work or at school or in a church and lost the ability to treat those on the other side with kindness and respect? When has that happened for you? I know we're going really deep here right off the bat, but comment in the comment section and we'll talk about it in the studio. Here we go. It's all just part of the process. All right, that was a really interesting conversation we had, and it was all about this idea of this first sort of wisdom for having grace-filled political conversations, which is take off your jersey, okay? The second one that Sarah and Beth give us is this: find your why. Find your why. What are your values? Why are you in this? What really animates who you're about and why you're about that? So Sarah and Beth dropped some wisdom on us here again. Give it to us, Kay.
What they had to say was this: it's one thing to be a fan of politicians. Yeah, fans. It is another to become a follower. Politicians shouldn't determine our positions and our values. Our values need to determine the policies and politicians that we support. It should be about crafting a culture, not crafting a cult.
That's...
It should be about crafting a culture, not crafting a cult.
Crafting a culture, not crafting a cult.
I think the biggest thing is is going back to listening to listen, listening to be heard. Always listen to get the other person's perspective and learn, even if you don't agree with it. I think you're wrong, but I'm still listening.
I'm still listening. So when we start with our why, when we start with our purpose and our values, I think that can change our hearts as well. It goes into our ear, into our brain, and then down into our heart. We can trust each other's why then. Okay, when we've had conversations, the more that I've gotten to know you, the more like I don't distrust your intentions in the conversation. I don't always see eye to eye to you, but I don't think you're coming at this from some sort of ulterior motive.
No.
You're coming at it as a human being. I might not agree with you to start with, but I'm listening, and in the listening, in the paying attention to a shared set of values, something new comes out of that, something creative, something grace-filled.
So when we talk about that finding the other person's perspective, we're talking about, not taking time to understand the motivations of the other person. So let's go back to the live studio and talk about our next Chatterbox question, which is, why do you care about politics?
Why do you care about politics?
What is your why?
We'll hear that right now in the studio.
Yep.
Well, that was a really interesting conversation we just had in the studio on that second piece of wisdom for having grace-filled political conversations, finding your why. Let's talk about the third one. Put politics in its place. Sarah and Beth say this: in many ways, we treat politics and specifically government as both the sole cause of all our problems and the sole solution. The sole cause and the sole solution. There's a book in the Bible, in the Old Testament, the first half of the Bible, part of the wisdom books of the Bible. It's called Ecclesiastes. And the author of Ecclesiastes says something. It was made into a song in the 1970s. You'll be familiar with it. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. There's a time for government. There's a time for other things. What are some of those other institutions, those other activities that we can be a part of, Kay?
There are things like education, media, getting involved in nonprofits, either by donating your money or your time. Getting into the arts. The arts is so important. It's a way to elevate perspective and motivation and life and lend a voice and lend power. That is a way that you can affect change in culture through something so expressive it can't be denied.
Exerting influence in media and even social media. Yes, your social media in a grace-filled way, right? We're not called to be compassionate just when we're face-to-face, but also compassionate and kind, gentle in social media as well. Sometimes I think we abdicate our authority in these different places. We say, well, government's going to solve that.
I'm going to take a break from social media. I can't handle the negativity.
And I know that feeling well. I know the feeling that the problem is so big. I say, like, it's above my pay grade. Somebody else is going to have to resolve that. But then I ignore the top places where I can exert influence. This reminds me of the difference in definition between charity and justice. Imagine with me for a moment that you are walking down a river path and you see somebody drowning in the river. So you're a good swimmer, you jump in, you pull them out, you save their life. Cha-ching! You keep walking down the river, there's a second person in the river. You jump in, you pull them out, you save their life. Cha-ching! All right, now you saved 2 people today.
You're on a roll.
You're on a roll. The church I grew up in, they said, you get some jewels in your crown for heaven.
Ooh.
So you keep walking down the river and there's a third person. Now once you've hit 3 people, you jump in, of course, you save that person. Now you're starting to wonder, who's throwing people in the river? So you go up the river, you find a bridge, and there's somebody throwing people in the river. Dealing with that person, that's justice. Dragging the people out of the river, that's charity. I think as followers of Jesus, we have got to be involved in both of those things, charity and justice, exerting our influence where we can.
When it comes to putting politics in its place, that isn't saying that it isn't important. It's just saying that while politics is sometimes about life and death, you still need to make room for life and living. You still need to make room for life and living. You need to make time for actually living your life. And sometimes that doesn't include politics. I timed it that time, though. I knew it was coming.
Somebody's focusing on drilling something.
That's their life.
In the life and death equation, sometimes we need to focus on the life side.
Focus
And the
on the
life
living.
side is where you do have influence in school, in your business, in your church, in your neighborhood association, on social media, what shows you watch, what memes you share, all of those things. That's the life side of the equation.
And in yourself, in your spirit, in your core, in your being.
We're talking about putting politics in its place right now. Okay, we've been trying to have a grace-filled political conversation. How have we done today?
I'd say we've done all right.
We've done decent.
Yeah.
I hope so. We'll find out in the editing room. Here's an ethos that we have to keep through all of this, and that is that some people are in trouble, and some people have tools to help people in trouble. What tools do you have to help your neighbor? And sometimes the solution to that isn't always government. Sometimes it's you exerting your influence. So we're going to go back to the studio for this conversation. Choose one way that you see your neighbors in trouble. What's one problem that's really on your heart these days? And what talents, resources, or abilities do you have to be of service to those people, to those neighbors? And as you answer that question, consider the parts of your answer that involve political conversation and the parts that do not. It's both. What part of helping your neighbor includes politics? What part doesn't?